In the credits of all the games ever made, there are countless names. Those names are probably something most people don't think about because, for the average gamer, the credit screen is nothing more than a marker of success, a visual confirmation that you've beaten the game. But for those whose names are listed there, that string of text means something else entirely. It marks a different kind of success, one of a long struggle to go from dreaming about scoring a game to actually doing it. In August of 2021, I was lucky enough to find my own name in the credits of a game called Song of Iron. But how did it get there? What's up guys, my name is Will Goss. It's probably the question that I get asked the most by aspiring composers. How do you land that first professional gig where somebody pays you money up front to score their game? So I wanted to share my personal journey into the world of professional game composition. It's been quite the ride, full of challenges and ups and downs, and I continue to learn new things each and every day. But for all the people that have helped me in my career, I want to give back and share the lessons that I've learned through those challenges. Some of these lessons may be applicable to you, others won't be, and certainly different composers have found other ways of succeeding. But hopefully you'll find something worthwhile in this video to take away and apply to your own journey. Over 6 years ago, in the spring of 2016, I was an exhausted gigging musician playing 3 to 5 shows a week on top of a day job, and I really felt like I was still searching for my place in music. After some soul searching, I realized that it was the creative process that I was passionate about. Writing a song or composing a piece, those were the things I wanted to spend my time doing. And as a lifelong fan of video games, films, and soundtracks, I quickly realized that that was where my passion lied. I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know how to become a professional game composer, but making that realization and deciding to commit myself to it was an important first step. So I wanted to score a game and had no clue how. What better way than by diving headfirst into the deep end? And that's exactly what I did. I started looking for small indie game projects that interested me, and I was lucky enough to find a small game called Forged Adventure, whose developer was willing to take a chance on me. The game was a fairly simple step RPG, and it wasn't going to blow anyone away, but I felt like it had the chance to be a good game that would help me develop my skills and maybe lead to other opportunities. Since the game had no funding and I was a total noob composer, we agreed on a revenue share model where once the game started earning revenue, I would be paid some percentage of that. The rev-share model was a helpful tool because it costs the developer practically nothing unless the game starts making money. With my background in songwriting, I had some composition chops, but my audio production skills were practically non-existent. Seriously. Listen to one of the first drafts of the main theme of the Forged Adventure soundtrack. So I realized fairly early on that my audio production and composition skills would need to converge at a high level to get to the point where my music was worth paying money for. I knew it would be impossible to sell myself as a composer if my product wasn't worth buying. Since I had a lot of catching up to do, I started working in whatever way I could to expedite that learning process. I joined Discord servers about music composition. I took part in weekly composition competitions. I joined a game jam and 2 strangers and I put together a game in 48 hours over Discord. I even went back to music school to learn as much as I could about composition. With Forged Adventure, because I chose a project that I genuinely believed in, I was willing to revise and revise and revise again as many times as it took until I got the sound right. And those revisions, combined with everything else, served as a crash course in audio production and composition. And by late 2016, I came up with this for the main theme of Forged Adventure. very flawed, but much improved from the original. Seeing all of this work pay dividends in this way taught me an important lesson in being willing to be brutally honest about your music and revising or even scrapping it until you get the sound right for the game. But it also taught me to have patience when you don't get the sound right in the first go. By early 2017, Forged Adventure had a brief stint on itch.io and then on Steam, but was ultimately abandoned. Fortunately, my production skills had progressed enough because of it to where I was able to put together a decent demo track for another game called Metaspace, which is still being actively developed to this day. The developer loved the demo, and it played a crucial role in convincing him that I could write a solid soundtrack for his game. That was the first time that I learned the importance of how impactful a good demo track can be. Frankly, it's next to impossible for people, including musicians, to judge whether or not someone has the ability to score some game in the future. There's just too many variables. So, if you can write a solid demo track to capture the spirit of the game, you bypass that guesswork completely. You make it a lot easier for a developer to gauge whether you're a good fit for the project. This is a really important lesson that I'll come back to later. By now it's late 2017, early 2018, and with 2 projects in my portfolio, I felt like I was really close to landing that first professional gig. It felt closer than ever before. That's when things got a little difficult. Getting the Forged Adventure and Metaspace soundtracks back to back warped my sense of how easy it was to become a professional. I think I was also a little naive in thinking it was just going to be a straight path to get to where I wanted to go. You get the first gig, and the next gig is a little better, and the third is a little better than that, and this linear progression leads you to becoming a professional. But that's just not how it works, and I was about to learn that the hard way. I learned that success is like a trend chart, where there's ups and downs, and you might be stagnant for a period, but as long as you're trending upwards, you're heading in the right direction. Between August of 2017 and May of 2020, I was 100% stagnant. I did not land a single new gig over that nearly 3-year period. And this is the part of the video where I have to be honest about the brutal and ultra-competitive nature of this business. As difficult as it was to face all of that rejection, I found it to be an important lesson in learning how to deal with it. Not only did it train me to have a thicker skin, but I also found that it trained me to be more willing to accept feedback on my music for the projects that I actually scored. I learned not to let my ego get in the way. Accepting constructive criticism is important, and more often than not, I find that it adds to my writing rather than taking away from it. Now, before you feel too bad for me, remember that during this time, I'm still in school. I'm practicing the piano a ton and working on classical compositions, both of which I had a lot of success with during that same time span. So it was not lost time. Even more importantly, I was learning new things that were going to help me in unexpected ways. Like most music schools, my school had an ensemble requirement, where students had to participate in X number of ensemble credits in order to get practical music-making experience. Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, I couldn't use my piano playing, so I opted to join the concert choir instead. In choir, we sang a wide range of music, from spirituals to madrigals to avant-garde classical. Much of this music was not in English, so we spent a ton of time studying and meticulously breaking down how to pronounce words in these languages. This introduced me to IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, which is a standardized way of breaking down and describing pronunciation. The experience was incredibly valuable in teaching me how to listen for and reproduce sounds in languages that I cannot speak. So when I chose to use Old Norse in the Song of Iron soundtrack, I had a way of accurately recreating those sounds myself. The Song of Iron soundtrack would not have been the same without that. Connecting obscure choral music to game music in this way taught me that you never know when some skill will come back to help you. In that sense, all music has become relevant to me and to my craft. No matter how foreign or how old or how irrelevant the music may seem to me at the time, this has given me the perspective that you never know when that music will come back and impact your writing in a profound way. But back to the story. How did I go from drowning in rejection to landing Song of Iron? Before I talk about how I landed Song of Iron, I want to talk about how I found it in the first place. By this point, I had mastered my process for finding games that I was interested in scoring, and I used this super advanced tool called a spreadsheet. This is my spreadsheet for 2020, the year I discovered Song of Iron. As you can see, each game has its own row. I capture some details about each project, like its name, who's developing it, a link to the game's socials, the type of game, when I contacted them, and what the last response was, if they responded at all. Each row also has its own color code with a system that's pretty straightforward. A row is colored green for a yes, yellow for a maybe, so for something like they aren't looking for music yet, gray for abandonware, and red for a no. You can see how many red rows there are. Then there's a small amount of yellow and a single green row for Song of Iron with a very excited yes in the notes column. This ain't too complicated, but I found tracking projects in this way extremely helpful by allowing me to follow up on all of those maybes, which may one day turn into a yes, while also preventing me from accidentally contacting the same project after receiving a no. So when I found Song of Iron on GameJolt in early 2020, onto the spreadsheet it went. I remember being ecstatic because Joe, the developer, hadn't found a composer yet, and I just loved the aesthetics of the game. And having learned the lesson of the power of the demo, I took the initiative and I wrote one. And I found Joe on Discord and sent him the demo and crossed my fingers. You might be tempted to say, so that's it? Just write a demo track and that's how you land your first professional gig? And in a sense, that's true, but I think it's a little more complicated than that. If you think about it, all the lessons that I've talked about, and so much more, are baked into that demo. Everything I learned about audio production from those revisions to the Forged Adventure and Metaspace soundtracks. Everything I learned about composition from school. Everything I learned about pronouncing foreign languages from concert choir. And so much more that's impossible to list in a single video, all of that coalesced into that demo and made it possible. But perhaps the most important lesson was learning to trust my instincts, musical or otherwise. You know, when I first decided to quit my job and go back to music school, there was a lot of resistance from people close to me. And once I made it to music school, there was a lot of resistance from my composition professors to write classical music instead of writing game music. But thankfully, I learned to trust myself. Had I not done that, I might have quit game composition, or I might have never gone back to music school in the first place. So none of this would have been possible without that. So I genuinely believe that if you trust yourself and you put in the work and continue to improve and are persistent, it's only a matter of time until it pays off. So that's it. That's the story of how my name landed in the credits of Song of Iron as the composer. Feel free to leave your own personal story and the lessons that you've learned. Leave them in the comments of the video. I'd love to hear it. And be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.